and start today.
Good morning, Sense of Things audience. It's Jeff and Ron here once again for another episode of the Sense of Things podcast, and a special episode because this is questions that you had for us. A few weeks back, I went on a trip from Austin up to New Mexico, and on that trip, I saw just a ton of renewable and sustainable energy in the form of wind farms and solar farms and everything else. And I made that point and said that during the show, and got a lot of questions from you guys saying, what's out there? What investments are in wind energy and solar and everything else? So I put some of that together today. So that's what we're going to cover. Ron, how you doing, my friend?
Good. Wait a minute. Audience participation?
It's
People
awesome.
up there listening.
There's actually people out there, and they're making comments and asking
Nice.
questions. You get rewarded for making those questions come up by us putting together a special show for you guys. So we're really excited to do this and keep doing it. We'll be glad to give you more of this as it comes out. So what we're going to cover today is what I consider 5 interesting renewable energy plays. Now, I will tell you, I'm a chartist and an economist by nature. So some of these kind of made me vomit a little in my throat when I look at it from a chartist point of view. But I think there's some interesting energy stories here. Ron, you got any ideas when it comes to what you're looking for when it comes to renewable energy?
I know that there's a lot of bad information out there. I hear people just trashing EVs. That sounds like a lot of certain conspiracy theories about coming from the oil people. I hear a lot of BS about windmills. And I'm thinking to myself, nobody's living out there. Why not put a windmill? Or why not put a solar farm? What's the big deal? And the other big thing that really has frustrated me is a lot of the conspiracy about how solar panels are made, that those materials are either not biodegradable or what. I'm thinking to myself, do you understand what's in a car with a converter and some of those other things, and how bad some of that is to the environment?
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation. I don't know any other way to say it. I'm not an expert in that area, but all I'm saying is in parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas where nobody wants to live, why are you complaining about a wind farm or a solar farm? Makes no sense.
I mean,
but honestly, I think you need all three. Why not?
Yeah, the thing is, and I guess from my perspective, when I started looking at this, there's no one solution. There's multiple solutions. If I could remember the book, and I'll share this on another episode, because there was a guy that wrote a book. I probably read it 20, 30 years ago, probably 20 years ago. It was right at the beginning of the 2000s. And he wrote a book called 2 Billion Barrels a Day. And it was an amazing book because he talked about, the different times during our history where energy changed. And he sat down and said, okay, this is what the future looks like. We're not at an inflection point where gasoline and oil is going to be replaced, but here's what the potential future could be. And it's interesting to see how some of that has changed. So I need to get my hands on another copy of that, and I'll share that with you guys on another episode. But let's talk a little bit about when I did my research on this, some ideas that I had if you're trying to look at what renewable energy that's out there. So I had to set some requirements for myself as part of that. When I looked at these, first off, my first thing is they can't be a one-trick pony. So I don't want to invest in just solar. I don't want to invest just in wind. I don't want to invest in other renewable energies. I want to have something that has more than that to it. And to be realistic, also, they probably need to have some, if they're a utility or an energy provider, they're probably they can't just provide renewable because it's not sustainable. And it's sustainable, but it's not something that can work consistently over time. So they need to have some other things involved with it. I'm a big dividend guy when it comes to this stuff. So it's got to have dividends. They've got to have sustainable revenue. They can't be up and down, which some of these pure plays, especially in the solar, they're all over the fence. And they at least have to try to have positive earnings. I do not like investing in things that have the promise of the future, but they're negative earnings for as far as the eye can see. And I don't like China. I'm not investing in Chinese stocks.
No
I
way.
don't trust the earnings from them. I just absolutely will not invest in them. Let's take a look at some of these 5 renewable energy plays. Now, NextEra Energy Partners, NEP, is a
Hold on, Jeff.
partner.
I just want to make sure you did do a disclaimer. These are not recommendations.
These are not recommendations. I was just getting ready to get to that. These are not recommendations. Do your own research. Find a competent financial advisor if you need to do the research with you and help you with this. I'm giving you some ideas of things that are out there. And I'm also going to say for this one, I am an investor in this company. So just for full disclosure, I do own that. That's not something that says you should buy it because Jeff owns it. It's just simply that I have investment in this company. There are 2 parts of NextEra. There is the NextEra Energy Incorporated, which is the corporation, and then this partnership, NextEra Energy Partners. The primary reason I bought this was because of the dividend. So I could give a living flip if the stock moves at all. I don't care. It moves up and down. It's been pretty volatile for an energy play, but it is a wonderful dividend of 14%, and it's been sustained. So that was the reason I bought it, because I just wanted to keep booking those dividends and buying more of it over time. So that's allowed me to make some money. But NextEra Energy Partners, based down in Florida, they're an energy provider in that market. They have heavy investments, of course, in solar, especially in Florida, because we have sun all the time in Florida. They also have investments in wind. They've even got some investment and this is the original reason I bought it, was they have some investment in wood pulp. So they take wood pulp and they use that in power generation. This is nothing new. The power generation or the wood industry has basically used wood pulp for almost 200 or 150 years to power the steam generators and things like that in their plants. So they've been renewable for as long as you can imagine. So NextEra, I think it's an interesting play. I don't know if you've ever come across that one, Ron.
I've heard of them. I will tell you, I am not an energy sector follower for a variety of reasons. But certainly if it's a steady Eddie and you're getting dividends, it also looks like it's a good call right play too.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, you're banking a 4% dividend and you write a call on it, you can get a nice little bit. And it's had enough volatility in there that if you wrote weekly calls against it, you actually can make a decent chunk of money. Next one, Brookfield Renewable. So Brookfield is a mid-Atlantic play. They're up and around the Baltimore area. Interesting play here. Another one that is very diversified. They have, of course, traditional plants. Now, a lot of these, you've seen these big rises and you see these big drops. I don't know what this corresponded to, but I've seen several with this basically the same chart pattern where they shot up and then they started to come back down a little bit. This is one, it's still holding above or holding right around its 50-day moving average. It was one I hadn't looked at before, but it perked my interest a little bit. Another one that is investing in, like I said, all the wind energy. They're more of a wind play because they're doing a lot of those offshore wind farms that are off the East Coast at this point. Another interesting play, 5% dividend, 5.96% dividend. Another interesting play for some of that kind of safe money in your portfolio, if you can stand some of the volatility that we've seen on it. HA Sustainable Infrastructure. This is another kind of a weird but interesting play that I hadn't heard about before. Another one of these popped up and then wandered its way back down. But what they do a little bit differently is their sustainable infrastructure capital play is that they provide a software largely for large industrial and even power plants that helps to determine the most efficient ways to not use energy. really an interesting save on money play where people are making investments in that area. Another one that they're coming in, they're making investment in, let's say, power plant, and they're bringing in more of that infrastructure sustainability inside of the power plant industry and the big heavy industrial industry. Fluence Energy, once again, it's the map of the Himalayas as far as the chart goes. It's moved around a lot. It looks like a lot, but it's about a $10 move from the top to the bottom. But this one's a real interesting play on the battery space. So although it does not meet my criteria of having a lot of different industries from the sustainable industry, Fluence is in 47 different countries around the world, and they're opening their first battery plant. They're a Dutch company. They're from Denmark, so a Dane company. They're making their first investment in the United States in Utah to build a battery plant here in the United States. And we all know that batteries are the play of the future. And batteries are what make things like wind and solar then sustainable over time. Yeah, I look at it in my own home. When we built our solar system, if I had not put a battery on there, it would be up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Because by the end of the day, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the energy demand is higher from the house than what the solar panels will do. So I'd be sucking energy out of the grid. But with my battery that I have on the house, I have a Tesla battery that sustains us well into about 11 or 12 o'clock at night. So
Yeah, I have actually never heard of Fluent.
yeah, I hadn't either. It was another one. I found it in an article and did some research on it. So it's interesting. It is all over the fence. It's a hold your nose stock in some cases, but it's an interesting play. And if you really believe in batteries, I think it's an interesting look at that point from there. And the last one, and
Yeah.
this one is Constellation Energy, which I hadn't looked at before, but I think is a really interesting play in the current world. It was not a ton of big news, but there was some changes in Congress that they made some changes from a law perspective around nuclear plants and making it easier for nuclear plants to be built just in the last few weeks. I saw the story and I left it stuck in the back of my head. And as I was looking at some of these stocks and doing some research on them, Constellation is a major player in the nuclear energy side of things. If they play in all the other sustainable energy, but they're also a player in the nuclear space. So if you believe that we're going to be able to get through the regulatory mess that nuclear has been, this is a play that you could possibly see. It's also been one that's a consistent player and it's got a nice fat dividend on top of that. So it's the bonus plan for a lot of things. So it's one that now on the back of my head to say, this is a potential, for that energy sleeve of a portfolio.
Yeah, they're a big player. They've been around for a while. They've been in the news. And certainly they have a lot more growth than the average company.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because, from what I understand, and I've done some research in the past, although I'm not an investor, they're very well diversified. So they can pull a lot of levers.
Yeah, they're diversified. They're in a lot of states, everything else. So that gives them that they're not the one trick pony once again from that perspective. So that's my 5. I think they're intriguing. I think they are ones that I feel like they're worth a look. I would encourage you to do your own research. Take the time to learn as much as you can about the companies. Take the time to listen. The beauty of today is you have full access to everything from an investor's perspective. So one of the things I would do is find the most recent quarterly update from the company and listen to the conference call. Listen to the questions that are asked of them, hear where they're coming from, and that should help you make a good decision.
Gotcha.
All right.
Good stuff.
Once again, guys, we do these shows for you. And when you ask, we're glad to provide this information. I hope this was helpful for you. It took a little while to put some of this stuff together, but I hope it gives you a starting point. Part of my accounts are at Fidelity. I know from a research perspective at Fidelity, a lot of times I can go to the stock research page and do a comparison, and it will pull up other companies that are similar to those. Hopefully, this gives you a starting point to look at. So thanks for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you give us that upvote. And hopefully this will help you get a start on maybe adding some energy to your or sustainable energy to your portfolio. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you guys back here the very next time.